Welcome to Are You Fucking Kidding Me? A thoughtful parenting podcast. The show that takes you from diaper disasters to the legendary teenage eye roll. I'm your host, Clementine Lord, here to guide you through every stage of parenting, from toddlers testing your patience to adult children testing your Wi-Fi limits. Parenting is a wild ride, and no matter your child's age, you'll always find a moment where you think, are you fucking kidding me? Hey there, fellow exhausted magicians of childhood. Welcome back to Are You Fucking Kidding Me? A thoughtful parenting podcast. The podcast where we navigate the messy, hilarious, and deeply existential minefield that is parenting. Today, we're talking about one of the most elaborate scams in modern parenting, the tooth fairy. That's right. The mystical creature who sneaks into our children's rooms at night to reward them for losing body parts. Before we begin, you may need to turn on your stealth mode and grab a convincing excuse because the tooth fairy forgot to show up last night, and now you've got some damage control to do. With all the magical childhood figures, the tooth fairy is the one that always made me go, wait, what? We're celebrating what now? While Santa gets to roll up with gifts for literally everyone, the tooth fairy is out here buying teeth like a sketchy pawn shop for baby molars. Kind of like those people who buy used sneakers online, but with more glitter and way worse return policies. Today we're going to dive deep into the psyche of the tooth fairy, like where the hell did this weird-ass tradition even come from? Why do you have to be an Olympian to sneak into your kids' rooms without waking them? And the economy of baby teeth, because some of y'all are handing out a 20 per tooth and ruining it for the rest of us. And of course, that gut punch moment when your youngest kid stops believing. Because if you think parenting is just about surviving, you're wrong. It's also about saying tiny, unexpected goodbyes all the fucking time. So grab your coffee, your wine, or just sit in your parked car, pretending like you're on an important call so you can enjoy some peace and quiet. And let's get into it. So let's just start with the obvious. The tooth fairy makes absolutely no sense. First of all, why is losing teeth a monetizable event? Like, at some point, some adult thought, you know what would be fun? If we paid children when their body parts fall out. And instead of everyone else saying, what the fuck? They said, yes, that's genius. And then we all just went along with it. I mean, think about it. There is no other biological function that results in cash rewards. No one leaves a crisp $5 bill under your pillow when you clip your nails. I'm sure my teenage son would have loved that, but it doesn't happen. Nobody's paying you for getting your hair cut. But man, that'd be a bonus. And teeth? Oh, those things are worth something. To who? What exactly is a tooth fairy doing with these teeth? Is she running some shady Etsy shop for Victorian dental jewelry? Is she in cahoots with the world's most deranged orthodontist? Is there a tooth fairy mafia and she's like the middleman? Like somewhere there's a kingpin fairy sitting on a throne made of tiny incisors? I have so many questions and really no answers. Seriously, people, what the actual fuck? What I do know is that the history on this tooth fairy gal is sketch at best. The tooth fairy, as we know her today, is actually a mashup of old traditions, modern capitalism, and a collective parenting lie we all just go along with. Before tiny pillows and crisp dollar bills, different cultures had their own weird little rituals around lost teeth. The Vikings, for example, believed children's teeth brought good luck into battle, so they'd actually pay for them, which honestly makes the tooth fairy look a little bit like she's running a pretty fair deal. And then, in medieval Europe, kids' teeth were often burned, buried, or fed to animals, because people believed witches could curse you if they got a hold of your teeth, which is kind of an energy I love. I mean, imagine explaining to your kids you're chucking their incisors into a fire for their own safety. Then in the 1900s, the tooth fairy got a glow up. That's right. You go, girl. At some point, she became this sparkly winged lady slipping cash under pillows. A mix of European folklore and American consumer culture helped solidify her gig, especially as parenting magazines and pop culture started reinforcing the idea. By the 1950s, she was an established capitalist icon, leaving nickels, dimes, and eventually outrageous Venmo transactions in exchange for baby teeth. The Tooth Fairy is basically the Uber Eats of childhood milestones, operating on a chaotic mix of last-minute panic, inflation, and parents frantically shoving money under the pillows at 5 a.m. when they realize they forgot. Some families get extra fancy with glitter trails and tiny notes, while others, the exhausted parents who don't have time for that shit, just slap down a whatever dollar bill and hopes for the best. I think that's where the 20 comes from. So long story short, this Tooth Fairy is a weird but charming mix of Viking superstition, medieval paranoia, and modern bribery. And somehow we've all just agreed to keep this tiny dental economy running. All right, so now that we've accepted this tradition as weird as hell, let's talk about how it actually works. Because if you haven't done a Tooth Fairy mission, let me tell you, it is not for the faint of heart. First, the child loses a tooth. This moment is horrifying in and of itself. There's usually blood, some kind of screaming, and a lot of, is it supposed to feel like this? No one warns you about the existential dread that flashes across a kid's face when they feel their own tooth pop out of their head for the first time. This is where the danger really begins. Because now, you are expected to sneak into your child's room, silently remove a tiny tooth, often under a pillow, or if you grew up in my husband's family, in a small glass with water. And you're supposed to do all of this without waking them up and replace it with money. Yeah, this sounds simple. It's not fucking simple. First of all, children's pillows are booby-trapped. They sleep on them like they're guarding the nuclear codes. And their bedroom floors are the minefields to get there. You so much as breathe near their pillow, and suddenly they are shifting, mumbling, or worst case scenario, bolting upright, making direct eye contact with you while you're mid-heist. Yet, they are still asleep. How the hell are you supposed to know that? And then, of course, there's the ultimate parenting failure. Forgetting. There is no panic quite like waking up at 6 a.m. to your child sobbing because the Tooth Fairy didn't come. Suddenly, you are in full crisis mode. You have 0.2 seconds to make up an excuse before this child starts questioning everything in the world. Oh no, maybe she was super busy last night. Sometimes it takes an extra day if it's a special tooth, honey. Wait, did you check under the bed? Maybe she, dropped it. Oh, look, that silly Tooth Fairy. And if you're really desperate, you pull the midday panic move. This is where, at some point in the next few hours, you dramatically find the money somewhere in the room. Oh my gosh, look, it must have fallen behind your bed. What a silly fairy. She must have really been in a hurry. This is why parenting is exhausting. We're all living double lives. But let's get to the real gut punch of today's episode. The day your youngest stops believing. It's different with your first kid. When your first kid figures it out, you're a little relieved. Great. One less thing to remember. But when it's the last kid, that's when the air gets knocked out of your lungs. Because it's not just about the Tooth Fairy, is it? It's about all of it. The Santa thing, the Easter Bunny thing, the little worlds of magic we've been creating for years that we've protected them with, and they start to collapse. And that fucking hurts. When my youngest figured it out, I definitely wasn't ready. I thought we had more time. But no, there I was, gardening outside when my daughter opens her window to her bedroom and says, "Mom, did you write this message on my window from the Tooth Fairy?" Here's the deal. This girl wrote a dissertation-sized letter to the Tooth Fairy asking for fairy dust. Some clever-ass COVID idea I had when I had time. I sprinkled some glitter and some fake snow outside of our fairy door. And shit, that's a whole different episode. And she scooped it up and saved it, but 3 years later, she lost the damn tiny Ziploc bag and needed more. So I left more, but I didn't have enough time or creativity to write a note. So I took a window marker and wrote on the window just like I did during COVID on the little notes. But it was a window, and it was big, and the tooth fairy is small. Damn it. Cue the existential crisis. So where the hell do we go from here? Well, first, we grieve a little. It's totally okay to be nostalgic, to miss the days when they were tiny and so little that their hands gripped your fingers and their eyes lit up at the simplest bits of magic, like the way a firefly glows or the moon follows a car at late night drives. It's okay to long for the times when their biggest concerns were whether they'd get to an extra bedtime story or if the tooth fairy would leave a glittery note. Those moments felt endless back then, but now they're memories that sneak up on you in the quiet, making it so you wish you could press pause just for a second. Nostalgia doesn't mean you don't love who they are now. It just means you remember. And that's a beautiful and painful thing. But then we celebrate the transition. One day they wake up and don't rush to check under their pillow with that wide-eyed wonder because they already know. Maybe they figured it out on their own, connecting the dots in that quiet, thoughtful way that kids do. Maybe an older sibling spilled the secret, or a friend at school announced it like it was a breaking news story. However it happens, the shift is undeniable. Suddenly, the tooth fairy isn't a mystical nighttime visitor, but a role you've been playing all along. And for a second, there's a little pang in your chest. Another piece of childhood magic fades, another reminder that they're growing up faster than you ever expected. But then you realize this moment is just as special. Because growing up isn't just about losing teeth, it's about gaining understanding. It's about watching them step into a new phase of life where they don't just believe in magic, they start to understand the people who created it for them. Maybe they don't stop playing along right away. Maybe they keep slipping lost teeth under their pillow. Not because they still believe, but because they know you do. And in that small, unspoken exchange, there's a different kind of magic that happens. One that's built on love, nostalgia, and on the quiet, beautiful transition from make-believe to memory. Then we pivot. Just because they know the truth doesn't mean the magic has to disappear. It just means it needs to evolve. The tooth fairy may no longer be mysterious or a glittery figure slipping money under their pillow. That doesn't mean the ritual has to vanish overnight. That doesn't mean the ritual has to vanish overnight. Maybe now the tooth fairy leaves behind funny notes, congratulating them on their final baby teeth, like a tiny whimsical retirement letter. Maybe instead of sneaking in at night, you hand them a crisp bill in broad daylight with a dramatic handshake and official-sounding proclamation. Congratulations on your last baby tooth. Your childhood dental era has officially come to a close. Or maybe the transition is marked with something even more special. Maybe it's a tooth fairy retirement party where they get to pick their favorite treat or meal to celebrate this milestone, and a keepsake box where they collect their baby teeth is given to them as a weird little time capsule of growing up. Unfortunately, my kids are screwed in this area because I threw away their baby teeth. A new tradition where instead of putting a tooth under their pillow, they write a letter to their younger self, reminding them of all the things that made childhood magical, even beyond the tooth fairy. Because the truth is, the magic was never really about a tiny fairy collecting teeth. It was about the wonder, the excitement, the belief that small moments can be special simply because we decide they are. And that doesn't have to end just because they've outgrown the fairy tale. It just shifts into laughter, into shared memories, into the realization that even as childhood fades, the magic of love, tradition, and connection never really goes away. It just finds new ways to show up. So, what's the moral of today's episode? Parenting is just a series of tiny, unexpected goodbyes. But we keep going, we adjust, and if all else fails, at least we don't have to wake up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat because we forgot to put $1 under the pillow. Thanks for listening to Are You Fucking Kidding Me? A thoughtful parenting podcast. Until next week, embrace the chaos, celebrate the milestones, big and small. And if the tooth fairy slips up, just remember, creativity in cover stories is a crucial parenting skill. You have got this.